Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So today's video, we're going to discuss the truth behind good aim on Apex Legends. Aim theory, the mindset. I actually have Hollow with us today. Hollow, go ahead and give a quick hello. Like, we're not the same person, okay? Like, I know everyone comments, it says like we have the same voice or everything, so I promise we're not going to be talking just to ourselves, okay? Now, the beauty behind this video is that, yes, it is going to be a long video. In the background, we're just going to be casually playing, but we're going to talk about theory. This is something that Hollow and I are very passionate about. I make a lot of educational content, and that we're going to pretty much be deep diving into. Keep in mind, we're not going to be talking about any exercises, but the mindset and theory about how it clashes and everything. And Hollow's going to go into that. It's set the stage in a second, but also kind of want to talk about Hollow as well. So Hollow's going to be doing a lot of coaching starting up here next month. I know that you guys ask for a lot of coaching just from me even, and I'll be honest, like with the amount of time and the content I'm doing, I just don't have time to coach. But Hollow is going to be doing coaching, and he's amazing. I mean, not to gas you up too much, man, but even I've had a conversation with you, and it's improved my gameplay. Just putting that out there.
As you're talking, I'm just whiffing every shot imaginable.
It's okay. We're just playing casually in the background. Like I just died.
I've been playing Terraria. Like I can't. I'm not gonna be too mad. But
it's
all
all
like whiffing so bad.
It's all good. I mean, that's kind of even the point later about just having fun too, right? Also, we talked about this. It's going to be posted on SoaR Apex, just kind of like good aim. But we did talk about some exercises in that video, but high level. And then also, I mean, let's talk briefly about. If people don't know who you are, I mean, you've achieved a high level of a success when it comes to aiming. And I know I can already speak just a little bit about this, where I know you spent probably around 15,000 hours, but that's just in general in gaming, right? That's not even including just FPS, but that this was one of your real first battle royales, and you came from Overwatch. That's an example, right?
Yeah, I'm really stinky. I don't do anything but play video games.
Let's see if I can get this person. Okay, so now we're going to segue to the next topic here, which is really discussing, I guess, how this mindset can apply to it's going to apply to almost anywhere in life. So when you step away, the goal of this video is that when you step away and you watch hundreds and thousands of videos and tutorials on YouTube, it's about applying the mindset and how you actually can apply this knowledge and take the steps to actually improve. So there's a few things that we're going to discuss, and it's all going to circle back because we're just going to discuss aim at the end of the day. But I want you to understand that it's still, when it comes to learning, that is still a process behind it, which is why it's going to be such a long video and why it's not going to be your average video. And it might feel a little bit like a podcast, but at the same time, it's really, really important. So I'm going to pass it off a little bit to Hollow. I know we have some talking points that we want to get through, but if it's okay, Hollow, if I kind of have you set the stage, and then we'll kind of just deep dive into each of these points, if that works.
All right, so, if you don't know who I am, I'm the aim dude. I posted a bunch of montages in like 2021 that nobody else did for some reason, and a lot of people liked them, including Mr. Daz here. And then he asked me to join this team. Smile.
Yes, SoaR Gaming. Yeah.
The goats. I've dabbled slightly in educational content, but I've kind of set myself up for failure with it because I've done on Twitch live streaming. And not actual tutorials and stuff, which there's a lot of reasons for that. I've got really bad executive dysfunction, but I'm fixing that because no one cares. Man up.
I mean, hey, this is why they need to get coaching from you too. And like when you watch the end of this video, I guarantee you're going to be sold on the fact too. Not to like hard sell it, but I'm just letting you know, like it's exciting. I'm excited for this video.
We'll let them make the decision after we talk for a little bit. So the whole goal, what we're going to do first is we're going to talk about kind of like set the stage, what the video is about a little bit, like what we're gonna, a little bit more than what you've just done, just for clarity. And then we're gonna talk about this fun little thing called critical thinking and how exactly it can be applied to aiming improvement. And talk a little bit about me and kind of like reverse engineering my journey of playing the video game. And how I've leveraged these things myself. And then we're also going to talk about the just the general mindset that you need to have with improvement, the leveraging of critical thinking and other formulas, right? I don't really like the idea of tutorials when it comes to something as complicated as aiming. because a tutorial implies that you're basically just telling someone how to do something exactly, and then they can just like follow the instructions. What I want to do is I want to teach you how to teach yourself, right? Because at the end of the day, there will almost never be any better teacher than you, because you have so much more of a perspective of, you know, your own experience. And
I think that's what makes aiming so unique, is that it truly is, because we're going to talk about that, and it is going to feel really overwhelming, which is why this has to be a theory video and it has to be the mindset, because aiming is not really a simple concept. I mean, with like all the settings,
there's lots of variables.
Well, yeah, there's like there's DPI, there's mouse pads, there's mouse acceleration, there's non-mouse acceleration, there's settings, there's FOV, there's a million things and tools.
Aspect ratio, focal scaling, recoil smoothing, vertical and horizontal recoil, visual recoil.
Yep.
Projectile velocity, projectile gravity, projectile size, projectile growth.
Yeah, and that's a lot. So let's talk about let's take things back down to basics, and let's talk about what are the skills involved when it comes to aiming, the actual skill.
All right. So before I answer this, when it comes to getting good at aim, a lot of people very fundamentally misunderstand the way that their skills, their tools, and their impact all interact with each other. So this is going to be what we're going to do is we're going to establish an understanding of these three concepts: skills, tools, and impact, and how they interact with each other, so that you can basically just have like a better foundational understanding, a better framework from which to kind of start teaching yourself how to aim better, right? Because a lot of perspective, a lot of stuff that goes around in the FPS community is pretty bad when it comes to these kinds of stuff, or when it comes to these kinds of things. But the trifecta: skills, tools, impact. So
the theme of today's video, just so your skills, tools, and impact. That's the most important thing. If you step away, remember, and I'll timestamp all of this: tools, skills, and overall impact. All right, pass it back off.
Your skills are things that exist independently from anything else, right? Just to kind of give like a simple analogy, a simple example, we have something like handwriting, right? So when it comes to having good handwriting, the skill in this specific sense, in this example, would simply just be your ability to hold the pen, right? Your ability to make the correct strokes on the paper in order to, you know, create a pleasant looking piece of writing, right? Could also be your grammar. It could be your command of language, your, you know, things that don't necessarily have to do with the actual writing process, right? But things that still are, you know, affect and interact with it regardless, right?
Yes.
So whenever you see someone that has good handwriting, you don't automatically assume that they are using a better pen than you are. You don't automatically assume that the paper on which they are writing is somehow the reason for that. You understand that their handwriting is an intrinsic skill, right? That is just tied to them in their brain and their hand, right? They carry it with them everywhere.
Yeah, that's a really good example, by the way.
So the whole point of the skills, tools, impact thing, specifically when talking about the skills part of it all, is that the skills are things that exist and operate independently from the tools that are used to convey them. So tying this back into aiming in FPS games, we can very easily, you know, take this and practically just copy paste the mindset, right? There's a lot more tools, there's a lot more skills that, you know, and there's a lot more things that can be registered as, you know, impact, right?
Yeah.
But the base concept still remains the exact same, where your skills are independent and operate and function independently from the tools that are used to convey them, right? Now, that I guess can segue into the next aspect of it, which is talking about the tools themselves.
Real quick, before we get into tools, can I make a comparison, and you could tell me if I'm right or wrong, just to kind of help the viewer as well? The same thing happens when it comes to basketball, baseball. People don't say, oh, it must be the field that they're playing on of why they're better. Or not, oh, it's because of their shoes. Oh, it's because of the basketball or because of the gloves that they're wearing. You know that the individual that is playing has an inherent skill.
You know they're athletic. You know that they know how to shoot the ball. You know that they... you know, have the stamina required to, you know, be physically active for that amount of time, right?
I'm glad you said stamina, because I think that goes very perfectly in terms of tools, because the tools sometimes you know, can be more than just the tools that you use, but also the resources, I guess you could say, to get you there, depending on how you utilize them.
Yeah. Everybody's using the same ball. I mean, you know, people are wearing... I mean, I'm sure there's regulations for shoes. I sit on my ass and play video games all day. I don't know anything about basketball, right? I just know that, like, what was it? Michael Jordan paid, like, a bunch of fines so that he could advertise his shoes on the court. That's all I know. But, anyway. And by the way, I think that this is kind of an important place to interject that, like, we're talking about the interactions and the proper relationships between the different skills that you have or that you need to have to perform in FPS games, and why a lot like we're basically just debunking this idea of like better mouse pad, better tools or whatever, like, because there's just so much of an emphasis and a priority on it that doesn't need to take place.
Agreed.
So with regards to the next part of the equation, so we talked about skills. Skills are things that are intrinsic to you and operate independently from everything else, right? It is just your brain and your arm, your hand, your wrist, whatever, right? You carry that around with you everywhere. Now, let's talk about tools. So, tools, roughly speaking, are just anything and everything that you use and leverage to be able to play the FPS game and to be able to convey and express your skills. So, this includes the PC or the console that you're playing on, the mouse that you are using, the skates on the bottom of the mouse, and the surface on which that mouse is being moved, which is the mouse pad, the keyboard that you are using, the switches in that keyboard, the keycaps, the you know, other keyboard technology, rapid trigger, adjustable actuation points, whatever, right? The force required to actuate a switch, your monitor, whether or not that monitor is on an arm or a stand, or, you know, the refresh rate of the monitor, the resolution of the monitor, the monitor's capability of display scaling. All of these things are nothing more than tools, right? And these things are what you use to convey, to express, and to leverage and to utilize your skills. These things are the same, they exist in the same place that a pen does or a piece of paper does in handwriting, right?
Yeah, and I don't mean to interrupt. I think it's important for people to understand when we talk about tools, like, it's okay to share tools and talk about tools and share your experience with them. But at the same time, it's important to find what works for you instead of trying to... I think everyone who's watching YouTube videos is always trying to skip the step of applying knowledge and understand why they do certain things, or why you're changing your FOV to be higher or lower, or why. And I've said this many times on my videos, but I think Hollow's going to do a more eloquent way of explaining it, which is why I have him on today, because it really pieces together just... You know, you can come with as many guides and stuff as possible, but at the end of the day, it does take the user to also be able to apply why, the answer of why these tools will impact, or what they do and why they do certain things. And
better yet, it is about understanding the different ways that these tools interact with and change your ability to express your skills, understanding to what degree these things interact with your ability to convey your skills, right?
Yeah, and that includes
how
comfort,
they interact,
right?
Yeah, exactly. But it more of just is having a healthy three-dimensional understanding and understanding of the relationship between these tools and, you know, the impact, right? Which is the one clip that I just did, or you know, winning a fight, winning a game, right? Like that is impact. Like it doesn't really take a long time to really describe these three concepts. You have your skills; these are tied to you. These are your ability to move the mouse, your ability to make correct decisions, your ability to understand and infer enemy movement patterns, your ability to read, recognize, and react to changes of direction within a movement pattern, right?
Correct.
These are all abilities and things that you have that are independent. They you know, they exist by themselves, right?
Now, I also
then you have your tools, so you have the mouse itself, the thing that is being moved. You have the mouse pad, the surface on which it is being moved, right? And then you have, you know, your monitor, the screen on which that movement is being displayed. You have all of these different things, right? Those are your tools. And then the impact is obviously, you know, what you are doing in the video game.
Correct.
And, you know, killing an opponent, winning a fight, winning a game, winning, you know, fighting off a third party. The impact is just whatever result you produce as a result of using your tools to express your skills, right? Now, I guess the next kind of thing that I want to do to kind of tie this concept together, tie all of this together, is that a lot of people over prioritize the tools, right? We've kind of talked about this a little bit, but a lot of people over prioritize the tools that they use to get the job done, and they don't prioritize their ability to use those tools correctly enough, unfortunately. It is like a lot of people are always searching for a best sensitivity, a best mouse, a best mouse pad, a best resolution, best field of view, best insert tool here, right? And what a lot of people don't understand is that even if there were like an objective standard that we could use to properly and effectively make a determination of a sensitivity being objectively better or objectively worse than another sensitivity, it unfortunately would only have so much of an effect. It would only be so effective because of the fact that, again, you are, regardless, like, okay, for example, your sensitivity is nothing more than like a value that determines how sensitive your mouse is to movement, right? Your sensitivity is nothing more than a number that determines how sensitive your mouse will be to how it is being moved, right? The thing is that it's still on you to be the one to move it correctly. And so,
and that would be goes back to skill.
Exactly. That is, the skill is being able to move the mouse correctly, to know how to move the mouse correctly, to be able to consistently do so. And I think that it's important to have a healthy and a realistic relationship of these kinds of concepts if you really want to improve at video games, right? Apex is 5 years old, 5.5 years old. Like, we've got to be working 5 years smarter than everybody else here. We can't be working 5 years harder. That's not realistic. And so, I guess just to, like, again, have a little bit of a buffer for everything that we've kind of talked about so far. Apex players and FPS players across the board traditionally have a very flawed and a very skewed approach of the, you know, these things, tools, skills, and impact, right? They have a very unhealthy perspective of how these things interact with each other. They have a very unhealthy perspective of, you know, how they interact with their gameplay. And a lot of them, unfortunately, have very, very two-dimensional perspectives when it comes to these kinds of things, right? And that isn't me looking down on them and being like, oh, yes, the two-dimensional peasants. It's more of
their brains
like,
are small. Their brains are small.
Yes.
That's not the conversation.
Yes, indeed. They woke up this morning and ironed out all their wrinkles, didn't they?
It's
not really
the
about
purpose
that.
of the
It's
video
more of,
is
yeah.
to understand that everybody can have this line of thinking, and that it takes a second to just kind of like take a step back. And I guess let's, before we get into the impact, let's also talk about that the answer can be also a little more simple than people realize. Like, I'm gonna put Hollow up there, where his growth and improvement, especially, really came from his passion behind the game. Investing just wanting to play. Having fun means that you're more inclined to want to learn, to put the time in, to hone your skill. And then the tools become only the asset because he knew exactly over time, after thousands and thousands of hours playing, what worked for you, what felt comfortable. How did this tool get you towards your end goal of what you're trying to achieve? And I guess with like handwriting, it can really feel very expressive, to where the way Hollow aims is never going to be the way that I aim or that somebody else's aims. In fact, how we all achieve different results are very different. The same way, just like everybody in sports achieves a different result. As long as you go in with the mindset and you reset all the way back down, you put the time in, you find out what works best for you, then whenever you're watching guides or whenever you're taking the approach and looking at tools, and that's more or less like, I would say that's more of the final step when you're right there. That's after, I think you said it yesterday, you're like, I can finally look at tools to say what works for me, but it took me, you know, a long time to finally get there, to figure out what.
I think this is a perfect time for me to interject, because I'm going to line up exactly with what you're saying. There are two different perspectives that you can have when it comes to improvement in any capacity, but this especially is true with aim. The first perspective is that it's a skill issue, and that you, the player, are not using your tools as effectively as you could be. You are not moving your mouse correctly. You are not exerting enough physical control over your mouse. You are not familiar enough with enemy movement patterns. You are not, you aren't good enough at controlling recoil. You aren't, whatever. You can look at it from the perspective of it being a skill issue, and you can take that with you practically till you die, right? The thing is that there reaches a certain point where another perspective can take hold, and that is the, oh, I should maybe let me just change, like, instead of me, let me just try to change my tools, right? And I'm going to give you a good example of this. So, because at the end of the day, like, I'm going to always encourage people to look at things from the perspective of a skill issue, but when it comes to the tools that we use, there are certain limitations that we can encounter, which is why it's important to, again, have a healthy three-dimensional understanding of our tools that goes beyond just them being better or worse, right? So, I play on a low sensitivity. I play on 800 DPI 1.2 in game, which is 43.3 cm per 360. That is the distance that I need to move my mouse on my mousepad in order to perform a 360-degree turn. That is on the lower end of sensitivities. Generally speaking, mid-range sensitivity would be anywhere between 35 cm per 360 and 28 cm per 360, which is anywhere between 800 DPI 1.5 and 800 DPI 1.8. Anything lower than that would be considered a lower sensitivity. And again, let me just kind of provide a little bit of a demonstration of this healthy understanding of tools. With a lower sensitivity, I am making my mouse less sensitive to how it is being moved, right? Sorry, this altar was weird.
No, you're good.
I was so confused. With a lower mouse sensitivity, what I'm doing is I'm making my mouse less sensitive to how I'm moving it, right? Which is going to naturally mean a few things. The first of which is that I am going to need to exert more force over my mouse in order to move it, because there's more distance that needs to be moved, okay? Another thing is that I'm going to naturally have less range of motion. Because of the fact that I need to move my mouse more distance on my mouse pad to make a 360-degree turn, or to make any movement, rather, I naturally am going to, have less space to operate on my mouse pad with, right? So one thing that I struggle with movement, especially, is whenever I make a wide angle turn. So whenever I tap strafe around someone's head, try to break their ankles, get out of their field of view, oftentimes what happens is I'm forcing myself to aim on a very uncomfortable area of my mouse pad, right?
Yeah.
So what we can do is we can look at this from two different perspectives. The first perspective is the fact that it's a skill issue. My inability to properly budget the space on my mouse pad, unfortunately, is a shortcoming that I am responsible for fixing, and that I should strive to fix by learning to reset the physical position of my mouse on my mouse pad in instances and in events where I, am making wide angle movements that, maybe put my mouse in those kinds of positions in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So that's the skill issue perspective. The second perspective, the flip side of the coin, is the perspective of changing my tools. So what I could do is, instead of saying, instead of learning how to manage this space on my mouse pad to this degree with this low of a sense. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my mouse more sensitive to how I move it by increasing my sensitivity. And in the process of doing that, I naturally give myself more room to work with so that less of my mouse pad is something that I would consider to be an awkward space to operate on, right? That is the improvement coin, right? Where like it's either a skill issue or a change of equipment is necessary, right? It's either my fault or it's still my fault, but it would be much easier to manage if I changed my peripherals. But the perspective and the underlying concept of personal responsibility should always take hold, even if you feel like you are being limited by a lower sense, right?
Yeah, maybe you don't have a large enough desk, or like there are some
skill issue, but having a realistic understanding of it is very, very important.
Because then when you have that, at least you can piece together why. Instead of watching like a random guide on YouTube, and then you say, well, this person achieved that, you need to understand why. Why did the pro do that, or why? And well, because there's so many variables, this is what makes it so difficult, is that we could sit here all day and explain every single variable on why Shroud does this, why Tens does this, why Hollow does this. And instead of looking inward, and it can be very hard to look inward and take the self-blame, which is also the problem whenever it comes to most Apex players, is that it's never my fault. It's never this person's, it's really hard to take accountability.
A lot of the valid excuses that Apex players give for a death or whatever have kind of just turned into buzzwords that just people like don't even really use. Like I'm being teabagged by like a really bad copy-paste controller Horizon with probably the worst name I've ever seen in my life. And I could sit there and be like, oh, the visual clutter. Like I just missed my wingman shots because of visual clutter. The red and the lighting in that environment's like really, really rough, right? But at the same time, like, is there anything that I can do about that? No. Well, then it's my fault. Like I should have just aimed better. I should have been more attentive. I should have been more focused.
Position better. Be with your team. There's a million variables, right?
Well, I mean, from the perspective of individual improvement, like running away to like the team-based environment's not something I would recommend. But I understand where you're coming from. Like that's just another avenue that
it gets crazy. That's why there's the rabbit hole. Okay, it's like because like as we get more in depth, I know you know what's crazy. This topic is just about aiming. Okay, and we haven't even
this universal philosophy applies to everything, but we're just applying it specifically to aiming in this case, right? It's crazy.
Which I guess gets us to the next point, which we're kind of already discussing a little bit, which is overall impact, right? The end result impact of like
this is the simplest part of the whole equation. Skills, multiplied by, divided by, added by, subtracted by, however you want to view it. Skills, insert math function here, tools equals impact, right?
Yeah.
So impact is the numbers on the leaderboard, the 22, 69 damage, right? Like that is the impact, the amount of kills that I have, the amount of assists that I have, the clips that I produce, the amount of fights that I win, the amount of games that I win, right? That is the impact. And at the end of the day,
can I go and add two cents in here? Yeah. I want to say this is why a lot of pro players, Hollow, I mean anybody can. I've even gotten a little, I could say, frustrated when people come and ask for settings. And like even my settings, I say constantly on my stream, this is why why there's a frustration there is because
people are asking the wrong questions, and it's very difficult to explain to them that
quickly,
the underlying mindset of there's two fundamental problems in the way that people think. The first is two-dimensional hierarchical thinking, which is the idea that something has to be better or worse than something else within a given group. What is the best mouse? In order for me to answer that question, there has to be something about that mouse that makes it objectively better than another mouse. What is the best sense? There has to be some quality of that somehow makes it objectively better than another sense, right? So it's this two-dimensional hierarchical thinking where there's no consideration of other variables and there's no consideration of other interactions between these kinds of things. And it is obviously just a dead-end question that people are using to try to evade personal responsibility, right? And then that segues into the second half of it, the second fundamentally wrong thought process, which is a fundamental lack of personal responsibility, the outsourcing of your ability to play the video game to your mouse pad, your keyboard, your monitor, whatever. Although these things do have very real ways that they interact with your ability to play the game, and although something like a monitor, or something like adjustable actuation points on a keyboard, although those things are objectively better or can be objectively better, like a 240 hertz monitor is obviously going to be better, right? It's still important to understand to what degree they are better. Exactly how much does this matter, right? And then on top of that, you also still have to be the one to use it correctly, right? Like I could put almost anybody watching this video on my exact same setup with all of my optimizations and everything, and I can guarantee that nobody will be able to do anything close. Why? Because of the fact that it's not about what you use, it's about how you use it, right? And so this combination of two-dimensional hierarchical thinking and a complete lack of personal responsibility in the equation makes it incredibly frustrating to answer these questions, because I have like this robotic response that I give people on my Twitch channel where I'm like, sensitivity is a tool. It is a medium of expression. It is only something that determines how sensitive your mouse is to how it is being moved. You, at the end of the day, are still the one responsible for moving it correctly, right? So to answer your question, there is no best sensitivity. That doesn't exist. And regardless of, how better low sensitivity or high sensitivity might be on paper, in practice, you are never winning or losing a fight because of the sensitivity that someone's playing. You're winning or losing a fight because of the fact that you either did enough damage to kill them or they did enough damage to kill you, right? And so that's why it gets frustrating, is because it's a dumb question, really. It's a dumb question it's a dumb dead-end question that basically robs me of the opportunity to actually help or improve, help you actually improve or do anything of that nature, just because of the fact that.
And I'll turn into a positive
here.
Doesn't
get you anywhere.
I'll turn into a positive, because everyone needs to give themselves more credit. You're smarter than you even realize. You have the ability to think critically. You have the ability to apply this. It's just a matter of taking, and maybe it takes this video to kind of explain that concept, because then you can be ahead of the curve, and then you can take things to the next level, whatever you decide to end up doing, whether it's just improving an Apex or any other X, Y, and Z variable that you want to apply. I just think that if you hold yourself to that standard and even know that you're confident what you can do, you'd be surprised in what you can net out. I mean, even the coaching I've done, it always surprises me how good somebody can be. And yes, they need a little bit of direction, but most of it is just applying some of this logic and then what you can do with it afterwards. So that's just empowering you, the viewer watching this, is like, just before you get overwhelmed or you get upset because it feels like you're in any way.
There's a lot of variables. It's totally okay to be overwhelmed, and it's totally okay to kind of not really have the sense of direction that you want to with improvement, which makes it easier to outsource these kinds of things.
Yeah.
But I can sincerely promise you that it is not you have a lot more control over the outcome than you think you do, and and it just takes a little bit of time to sit down and think all right, sensitivity, high sense versus low sense. What's the difference? How do these things actually interact with each other? Let me sit down and let me form this perspective. You know what I mean? Mouse, right? All right, I've got a sensor. If the sensor's higher up, that means that it's further away from where the movement is originating, which means that it's probably going to make things feel a little bit different, right? Polling rate. What is this? The amount of times per second that my mouse is reporting its position to my PC. Let's look at. All right, let's. Probably shouldn't go past 1,000. Just because higher polling rates are great, but Apex sucks and stutters above 4K hertz.
Yeah, it does. It's pretty rough. Even after testing 4K.
I'm on a Final Mouse Taric and I can't do that. I don't know. It felt okay in Valorant, but it didn't feel as good as I thought it would. Anyway, it's just sit down with yourself and try your best to have a healthy understanding of the variables, right? And once you have a healthy understanding of the variables and how they interact with each other, then all of a sudden things get a lot more easy. And what you need to do or what you don't need to do becomes a lot more obvious,
And also be fair to yourself. Be patient. I think one thing that people don't realize is that, okay, well, I need time to try to improve the skill, to figure out this variable. Most people just try to skip and say, oh, I want 1 hour. That's it. No, it takes hundreds of hours, thousands of hours to really to put the time in. I know that for most people, when you want the end result, the impact, to see nothing but winning, but you have to enjoy the journey, the fun of getting there. And we talked about that on the SoaR Apex channel, but kind of want to circle back here by saying that, because I think it really paints a picture of everyone just wants the end, but you're forgetting the part of it, which is the journey of exploring the skills, the tools.
Give yourself enough of a sample size. A lot of people try something and then don't even give themselves like a long enough adjustment period to be able to like properly like internalize things.
Agreed. And I mean, we've been going for like 35 minutes now, but I do kind of want to make sure we're not missing anything. Because you know what's crazy? I'm going to put it in the comments, but we have been playing clearly this whole time and running around and while talking. And the reason we did that is I like the fact that if somebody can talk while doing something as overwhelming as Apex, then you know that we're not giving you like a line of crap. Maybe it could have been worded better or put in a different phrase, but you know that we're confident what we're saying and that it does work. And you could hear even with Hollow, I mean, he's been popping off and going crazy as well, that we're confident what we're saying to help all of you guys improve, which is the whole point. So next time when you watch a guide, when you watch a video, and I know that some individuals do this, where you watch 10 different guides and you take what was most applicable to you, and it maybe wasn't the quality of the guide, maybe somebody just said something in a different form of fashion that clicked for you in a certain way, which is kind of off topic, more or less. That becomes of like how you were taught and how you learned, but it is a variable in terms of how you apply that tool. Come full circle: skill, time investment, owning up to your own mistakes, investing, having fun, and improving, because Hollow is just a proven result. I mean, to be honest, I know Hollow doesn't know this, but this is also my first Battle Royale. My only FPS game that I really played prior was Battlefield. That's not even a competitive FPS title, which is insane, you know? It's not. I didn't play CS, I didn't play Valorant, I didn't play Rainbow Six Siege. You know, a lot of the knowledge that I applied was actually what I learned in school as well, of how to get better. That's really what it came down to, and what I invested and said, okay, how do I take the approach rather than just going, because you said this before we even started, people applying the steps to learn rather than just saying, I'm going to memorize it, I'm going to memorize it, I'm going to memorize it, right?
Well, yeah, it's just like, if there's anything that anyone should take away from this video, if there's anything that if you literally like plug your ears and go blah, 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 but like pick one thing to listen to in this video, it would be this. Most people in FPS games have a very, very unfortunate tendency to over-prioritize something called memorization-based learning, which is the idea that in the case of aiming is the product of is like knowing how to aim correctly is like just nothing more than the product of memory, right? Where you're just like memorizing all of the correct, things to do. And, you're just brute forcing it basically by like, when you learn math, you don't memorize the answers to complex multiplication problems. You have formulas that you use to solve them. Instead of like simple addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, those little speed tables you used to do maybe, depending on where you grew up, like those things, beyond very simple environments, the only thing that really actually matters, or like beyond simple environments, the only thing that you should be approaching things with by default is the concept of conceptual learning, right? So instead of brute forcing everything with by just trying to memorize it all, understand things from a conceptual level, understand the formula, right? And in this case, the groundwork for a healthy understanding of like tools and peripherals and stuff is the understanding of the relationship between tools, skills, and impact, right? That's a formula. A formula for what? Healthily understanding and mapping out the interactions between, skills that you have, the tools that you use to convey them, and then what that ends up producing in the actual game itself, right? So,
exactly.
Conceptual, and don't get me wrong, memorization-based learning isn't bad. It's only bad when it's used incorrectly. Understanding something conceptually and then learning patterns, right? And memorizing patterns as they occur, like that's awesome. I do that all the time. A lot of how I aim is based on pattern recognition, right? But strictly understanding things from that standpoint is not going to get you very far. And it's the bottleneck for a lot of FPS gamers.
I'm going to use an example from the acting world, because some people may say, well, some things just require memorization, like such as learning lines in a play, right? I would actually hard disagree on that. And the reason why, the only way that you can learn a character, because I mean, I know not everyone watching this is an actor or singer, but the way you learn the patterns and improve is by conceptually understanding the character and their motivation. And you're no longer just reading lines off of a paper, memorizing it, but it becomes more organic and natural, which creates a better end result because you understand intention and you understand everything. Now, you can't avoid, obviously, you do need to memorize things, right? You do need to understand the lines, but memorization becomes easier whenever you are applying logic and connecting the dots, which is...
Memorization becomes more effective.
Yes, there you go.
When you understand things conceptually. Like, I can, like, if I'm in a play and I, am playing like some hillbilly, right? Memorizing the lines the hillbilly says is not only going to get me so far. I need to put myself in the mind of a hillbilly. I need to start talking like this. I need to be like, all right, now we're going to go in this door. We're going to tap straight on in now. Where is he? Oh, nice mirror. There we go.
And I get to apply the logic of someone who's uppity. Oh, well, because I believe that I'm just better than everyone. It's just better.
It's just like, it's understanding everything's place,
Yeah.
Which again is just like healthy interaction. Not everything has to be better or worse than every other thing. Sometimes things can just be different.
Yep.
And the thing is that like sometimes something can be better than something else from the one perspective, but from another perspective, it might be worse.
True.
And so, like, when it comes to, how I got good at video games, which granted, I'm, like, not really performing well, and I guess I'll kind of, like, wrap everything up.
We'll wrap up here.
With the rest of, what we have planned. I guess, like, the way that I got good was I started playing video games. I had a good basis, right, of like unconscious, unintentional learning, just over thousands of hours of Overwatch experience, right?
I'll go to the lobby just so we know we're wrapping up here.
Okay, yeah. I played Apex, and I played, and I just kind of got a feel for the video game, and I had a lot of fun with it until I realized that Apex operates at a very low concentration, right? The amount of times, even in a deathmatch, that you get to shoot your gun are very low, right? The amount of times that you get to outplay a team are very low in comparison to other games. Like Overwatch, for example, it's now 5v5, which means that anything and everything that happens in Overwatch is a direct result of something that you or your team does or does not do. There's full ownership of what happens to the enemy team on the part of your team, right? In a battle royale, a lot of what happens has nothing to do with you. Which is why I hate people who play for the win in a pub, right? Where there's no RP on the line, whatever. People who play for the win in a pub and they celebrate that win when it had nothing to do with them or their effort, right? They just kind of let everybody else do everything for them, did the bare minimum amount of effort. Whoa, I won! I live longer than everyone else. And so I realized that this battle royales, especially like Apex, are inherently designed to make worse players feel better about themselves and to artificially inflate their perspective of themselves by making a very loosely defined objective that can be very easily accomplished by doing nothing practically. And so I started really applying the critical thinking, the understanding of settings and peripherals, how they interacted with my gameplay. I go to a high FOV, my sensitivity feels lower. Why? Oh, there's less perceived motion on my screen. I go to a lower one. Oh, it feels higher. Well, there's more perceived motion on my screen because I'm more zoomed in. Oh, the sensor on the position of the sensor on the bottom of my mouse does kind of change how things feel. I'll keep that in mind going forward. Oh, I like a mouse that has a shape that's a little bit more tapered in on the sides. Why? Because I like picking up and putting my mouse back down and swiping. I also like exerting a little bit of extra tension here. I started thinking about things from multiple perspectives, right? From the perspective of it being an equipment issue, from the perspective of it being a skill issue, from the perspective of it being an aim issue, a game sense issue, a positioning issue, a decision-making issue. I looked at things from the perspective of my teammates, from the perspective of my enemies, from the perspective of the third party that is behind me, Yeah. And I used to narrate literally everything that I did out loud as a way of just kind of making myself more consciously aware of what I was doing, which was exhausting, by the way. That's why I don't do that anymore. But I've gotten to a point now where I understand these things. I'm still learning. I'm not perfect. I'm not some deity, right? I'm like, but I've gotten to a point where I have a very, very high level of an understanding of these kinds of things. And although I am good at the video game, and although I can, you know, fry people, and at least from the perspective of like mechanics and aim specifically, um, it looking back on all of it and like kind of reverse engineering all of it, if I were to speed up this entire process, I would have like VOD reviewed myself a lot more intentionally instead of just looking at clips that I had and like using that as a VOD review thing, so that I can, um, you know, make myself more aware of the bad habits that I have rather than just like the things that I'm doing right,
Yeah, looking at
and so
everything
that I can
holistically.
mitigate that. I would have probably, I probably would have aim trained a lot more, just to like help remove some of the bottleneck of physical control over my mouse. Because I mean, I use, again, talking about like the healthy relationship of like tools and stuff. I use a very light mouse on a very slow mouse pad with a very low sense. So with a lower sensitivity, there is more force that I need to exert on my mouse. I negate that, or and my pad as well. There's because my pad resists my movement more because there's more static and dynamic friction. You know, I have a very light mouse to counteract that, and I did it unconsciously. I didn't know that I did that until I really sat down and asked myself questions and I thought about it.
Yeah,
Right,
like
and so
I can
that's how.
I can share
And
that sentiment. Like example, I
yeah,
have a fast glass mouse pad with controlled mouse gates, and I recently changed those a while back to the Obsidian ones to add more control because it was very very fast with a medium weight mouse, and it's not the lightest mouse, but not the heaviest. But that does give me more control. It's like we're achieving the same result from what works best
well,
for us
what I'll
in our
say is
own
like
way,
even
what feels
with what,
comfortable.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but from like a healthy perspective, I don't think that like I don't necessarily think that it gives you more control because we talked about our skills existing independently from the tools that we use
True.
to convey
I
them.
Yeah, that was a
I
misspoken
think
on my part.
that
Yeah.
from the from the perspective that we've talked about over the course of this video, like with me, um, with using a very low sensitivity and a very slow pad, my control comes much less from my ability to control the mouse, and it comes more from a leveraging of those kinds of things. Are they crutches at this point? For me personally, they might be. Whether or not something is a crutch is ultimately determined by the intention with which it is being used.
Like my
There are
core
no
pad,
crutch
like the
legends.
core
There is.
pads, I'm gonna be honest, it's a skill issue. I could have been better with using that speed, but yeah. So the Obsidians gave me more control, but I can definitely put more skill into mastering that to get me to that
You
next
could
level.
definitely go out of your way to change your tools to give you a platform that allows you the opportunity to become much more aware of your mouse control. Like for me, like when I aim train on a SkyPad, right? Or whenever I play on a SkyPad occasionally for practice, I do that. Why? Because I want to make sure that like there's less resistance to my movement so that I can truly understand and have a much more accurate like understanding and representation of how exactly I'm moving my mouse, right?
Yeah.
Especially on that pad. But do I sit there and do I play on the SkyPad all the time? No, I don't. I go back to my radar, right? And does that make the SkyPad objectively better or objectively worse than the radar? No, because I've one clipped people on SkyPads before that have done absolutely no damage to me, right?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't mean the mousepad is better or worse. It means that it's different, and it provides me a different opportunity to understand something more about myself, right? And so just to kind of wrap everything up, critical thinking. Think about things from multiple different perspectives. Think about things from a conceptual standpoint rather than a memorization based one. Understand, add some depth into the way that you think about these things. Two-dimensional thinking has on a graph, right? Two dimensions is what? It's height and width. Add both literally and figuratively some depth to the way that you think about these things, and I promise that you might experience a little bit of getting worse, right? Sometimes you do have to get worse to get better.
Yep.
Ignorance is bliss. There's people that are really dumb that know nothing about this stuff that like ask me questions, so that like a couple of like really good mechanical players, because they don't want to make themselves overwhelmingly aware of all of this, because you do kind of have to come full circle with it. But once you do come full circle, it's worth it. And the reason why you do have to come full circle is that you know, the more aware that you make yourself and the more that you kind of like overload yourself with information, the more things you're going to be consciously aware of that kind of take away from your bandwidth when you're playing the game, right? Like when I change my field of view and I'm really like, you know, paying attention to that, you know, it feels so different, and my sensitivity feels this much higher because of the fact that there's this much more this much more perceived motion on my screen, and the focal scaling system is also different, which means that the centimeters per 360 value, whenever I aim down sights, is slightly different, despite the fact that the monitor distance coefficient, you know, scaling system, whatever it is, that the focal scaling system that Apex Legends has is designed to preserve a one-to-one distance, blah 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 blah. Like, don't get me wrong, there are times where you are going to kind of overload yourself with information. I've done it.
Yep.
But once you've gotten to a point where you've come full circle and where you do understand all of these things, um, it can make your life a lot easier. But you do have to work for it a little bit. But again,
put in the time.
Work 5 years smarter than everybody else. Don't work 5 years harder. All right, playing this game in like more than 4 hours a day is frustrating enough as it is with what they're doing with it. Like,
be kind to yourself. Essentially, don't drive yourself crazy. You know, you have this. Again, be sure to check out Hollow's socials. I mean, he's going to be coaching starting more in July, so please be sure to support him. We posted a video on SoaR Apex that definitely you guys should check out. It's going to be probably posted after the fact of this video, but I definitely recommend it because it's a continuation of, or the start of the conversation. This is kind of smack dab in the middle, and that's done purposely because I assume that all of you guys have kind of watched a lot of content, digest a lot of content. So compared to SoaR Apex, maybe you're a little newer on that front, or like just getting your feet wet. But I appreciate Hollow. Thank you so much, man, for coming in and just chatting. And I hope that somebody stepped away with a lot of knowledge here, where I guess, I'm going to simplify it. Not a lot of knowledge, but simplified knowledge with adding an extra layer of just knowing that you can just critically think through this. And yeah.
Real quick, before we go, if there is some way that I articulated this concept or the things that I'm trying to say in a way that you might not understand, just know that I'm kind of just doing this off of the top of my head. I do plan on creating resources, both written and video related, that kind of articulate this in a much more easy to understand and a much more digestible way. I do love the conversation format though, because you asking clarifying questions and interjecting does help a lot, I feel like.
Yeah.
But to be quite honest, when I do start coaching, my goal is to not gatekeep information. So I'm not going to be making anybody pay for information that is behind a paywall. It's more about giving them an experience and helping them leverage the information that I'm going to make publicly available everywhere as much as I possibly can. And I want people to be paying for a personalized experience where I take that and I help it apply it to their gameplay. I take my time and my perspective and my knowledge and I look at their gameplay and I help them develop a similar perspective, an informed one, so that they can teach themselves. I don't want there to be a dependence on me for improvement. I want to teach people how to teach themselves. I want to do it honestly, and I want to make sure that I'm actually helping people as much as possible, because I have been endlessly frustrating myself trying to do it through the literal straw that is Twitch chat. It has been unbearable trying to educate people and trying to help people there. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm going to take ownership of the fact that I let it sit there for too long. And I'm just going to be doing it in a one-to-one environment where I can genuinely help people, because I love doing that. My grandfather had a PhD in philosophy. My grandmother was an English teacher and a German teacher. Like, I love teaching. It's in my blood, but I've kind of set myself up for failure so far with it. And I honestly can't wait to be on track with fixing that. Coaching starts up July 2nd. If you are watching this video after that, you can just join my Discord, and
I'll have a link to the Discord as well in the description.
Sweet.
Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys all in the next one.
Man, I appreciate you.
No worries, dude. All right, we'll speak all soon. Bye, everybody.
Peace.